So in this video, we finally reached the point that we've all been waiting for. We're now finally going to calculate out our profit. When we talk about profit of the firm, it's that money that a firm has left over after it's covered its costs. Our economic profit is calculated as our total revenue minus the economic costs. When we consider economic costs, remember that this includes both the explicit costs as well as our implicit costs. So when we talk about explicit costs, we're talking about the things that we need, the factors of production that we have expenditure on. And when we talk about our implicit costs, it's essentially the opportunity costs of giving up our next best activity for the resources that we already own. So if we become an entrepreneur, we start a company, I'm also giving up my time and energy that I could have spent as a salaried employee somewhere else. Most firms, most companies that are out there generally are profit maximizers. Almost universally, companies are trying to make sure that the extra money they have left over after the costs is as big as it can be. This isn't always the case. Sometimes a firm might have a benefit in trying to maximize its revenue, which isn't always the same as maximum profit. Additionally, a firm might be trying to satisfy different levels of its organization, so competing interests of the owners of the company versus the managers of the company. But by and large, the circumstance we find ourselves in most often is the idea of profit maximization. So in profit maximization, if I'm going to earn as much additional money as I can beyond the cost of production, I need to reduce my costs. I need to be efficient in my production. I need those low average costs. I also need to increase my revenues. I need to sell more and more output, preferably at high prices. So definitionally and via equation, our profit maximization occurs at the level of output. Remember, output is on a horizontal axis. The level of output where my total revenue minus my total cost is as large as it can possibly be. We are going to demonstrate this a few different ways. The first approach for profit is this total revenue, total cost approach. We can also look at profit maximization through the lens of marginal revenue and marginal cost. So in this video, we're going to explicitly explore our total revenue and total cost curves to derive out the maximum profit that a firm can achieve. Notice we have one additional definition here before we get to our curves, and that's normal profit. When we talk about normal profit, we essentially are saying that our total revenue is equal to our total cost, that the firm is breaking even. It doesn't have anything additional left over after it's covered its costs. And this still might be in the best interest of this firm, that this firm is still paying its salaries, that it's not going into bankruptcy, it's still able to operate, and the stakeholders are relatively well off as a result of its operation, that it's not in the best interest of this firm to shut down and do something else. This might be the best use of the resources that it has available to it. So normal profit is the revenue the firm must receive to keep its business running. This is generally considered to be the break-even point for the firm. Here we can see three different diagrams. In my first diagram, I'm looking at the profit maximization of a firm that is in perfect competition. So we can recall from our revenue videos that a firm in perfect competition experiences this increasing linear total revenue curve with no fall off at the end. So if we superimpose the total cost curve on top of this total revenue curve, we can see that at Q1, this firm has achieved break even. It's able to cover all of its costs via the revenue that it generates from its sales. It is not at break even at points before this because our total costs exceed our total revenues. This is a bad circumstance for this company to be in over here on the left side. On the right-hand side, we can see different levels of profit within this area that represents the difference between total cost and total revenue. The profit maximization occurs where the difference between total revenue and total cost is greatest at this Q2 point. Remember again, we're looking at perfect competition. If I go over now to my diagram on the right-hand side, the only thing I've changed here is that now I'm looking at a firm that is in an alternative market structure, such that the firm has price-making power. And this is the idea that where total revenue is falling off, this firm has to lower its price to induce additional consumption. And therefore, it may not want to produce at the maximum output available to it via its factors of production. So here we can see, again, that maximum profit, the profit maximization is still occurring where we have the greatest difference between our total revenue and our total cost at Q2. Here we have our other method of calculating profit or trying to establish the profit maximization of the point of the firm via diagram. This is considered to be our marginal revenue and our marginal cost approach. If we look to the top left diagram, what we can see is we've drawn marginal cost and we've drawn marginal revenue. Notice the horizontal nature of our marginal revenue curve. This is the same as our demand curve, which is the same thing as our average revenue. We can see that the firm has a constant price. They're not decreasing price to incentivize greater sales or greater output. What we see as the profit maximization point when we use the marginal cost, marginal revenue approach is that profit maximization occurs where marginal cost intersects with our marginal revenue. So each additional unit of output loses the firm money at any point beyond that profit maximization point. So it's in the best interest of the firm. It makes sense for them to stop producing where marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. They don't want to see the cost being greater, the marginal cost being greater than marginal revenue, where they might be losing money as a firm, or they would have less profit available to it. So it produces where MC equal to MR. The same is true of a firm that is in an alternative market structure where there's price making power. Note that the demand curve is now going to be downward sloping, and we also see that our marginal revenue curve is twice as steep as that demand curve, which represents the average revenue. Again, we're still producing, though, where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. This is where the firm is made best off, where it has profit maximization. So for both of these diagrams, the key idea here is that it's in the best interest of the firm to produce when the additional revenue from one more unit of output exceeds the marginal cost of production. This occurs at all points to the left of this Q profit max point in both perfect competition as well as other market structures, which include like monopoly and oligopoly. Again, to the left of Q profit max, we have marginal revenue exceeding marginal cost. So it's in the best interest for this firm to sell additional output and produce additional output because it's going to have increasing amounts of profit. But it is not in its best interest to produce beyond marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue in either diagram.